Alright everyone, please settle down. Class is in session, and welcome to another Paladins lecture where we'll be looking at one of the younger maps in the Paladins map rotation, Ascension Peak. As with the other videos in this series, we look at the theory, apply it into the game, discuss some tips and tricks passed on from my experiences and also that of high MMR, PC and console players, and I hope that you find this invaluable in helping you master the Ascension Peak map. Finally, we end on some champion recommendations, and these are champions that have kits which I feel really complements the layout of the map and the playstyle that most games tend to follow when you play it on Ascension Peak. Shoutouts to FaladeYT, a high MMR console player, for helping me with the recording of not just this video but also the previous ones in this series as well, and also just being able to bounce ideas off each other and get his experiences across in playing this game at a higher level than I did. And also let me know in the comment section if you want to see some of the outtakes. We do have a lot of fun recording them, and they do make some pretty good moments. So let me know if you want to see some of that, and I will arrange that for future videos. So for now, grab a drink, make yourself comfortable, and let's begin. Ascension Peak was a map that I do actually remember quite vividly when it was released. I remember trying to get back into the game at the time, and all I would come across was this map on pretty heavy rotation. Good thing that I actually came to really enjoy playing the map. Ascension Peak itself was released as part of Open Beta Patch 68 on March 28th for 2018 in a patch aptly called the Siege of Ascension Peak, and I think this was the first map that featured an exclusive game mode. Please correct me if I'm wrong on that one. It's a map full of detail and one of the most vibrant maps that was released at the time, and of course until Bazaar came out over a year later. But we'll get to that for another time. And just by playing this map, you can tell that a lot of love and attention went into this one. There's flipping whales flying in the background as well. Just the color palette, the architecture is just absolutely gorgeous, and it makes playing this map a real joy. So, as we have background on the map, let's go into the theory. Let's have a look at the top down for this map, and already you can see what I mean by when I say this is a very vibrant map. I mean, look at the color palettes. This is a gorgeous map to look at, and yeah, anyway, that aside, welcome to Ascension Peak. 3-lane siege map that is mirrored down the middle as with every other siege map. So once again, any annotations I do for teams on this side, just flip over and apply to the other depending on which side of the map you spawn. So Ascension Peak is one of only 2 maps that features a rectangular point to control, and the other being the newly released Bazaar map, as opposed to a standard circle point. There may be a circle here in the middle, but the actual point is this rectangle here. And because this is quite a rare occurrence, I'll address it specifically. The larger rectangular point means 2 key things. Firstly, those fighting on it have a lot more room to move around and find cover for themselves behind shields whilst they're contesting the point. So normally, like when you see point fights in Stonekey or Frog Isle, the maps we've already looked at, it can be very confined and very cramped down onto that center circle. But with Ascension Peak, you have a lot more room to breathe. You have a lot more room to maneuver around as well. Second key point, it makes it super easy for any member of the team to touch the point and contest it for overtime, because as long as you are on the point, you are contesting it. Doesn't matter if you're standing in the middle or if you just touch the corner. Just walk on it for a second and walk off. You've touched the point, you've got overtime, and you're contesting it. And that is going to be really crucial to bear in mind, not just for this map, but when we do actually look at Bazaar later on, this is what you're going to be seeing. So to the lanes, and you're going to get fed up with me saying this, Ascension Peak is a 3-lane siege map. What do we mean by lanes? These are the main sections of the map, the main ways that you're going to be traversing the map and getting to those different areas. So lane 1 is straight up the middle. You're going to be following either the main road, going straight to point, or you're going to be cutting down like this through some steps, or down here. So again, it's a much larger map, so lane 1 can be quite large, but it is the most direct way of getting to the point. So lane number 2 is we're going to take a trip through some of the back rooms over here. So again, this is assuming you've spawned from this location. You're going to go to the left hand side, and then you go through these houses and come out at the top here, and you're onto this raised platform. You have the option here of either setting up there or going down towards the point. It's really up to you. And remember, you can also use these stairs here, so you can loop around and go like this. But that's lane number 2. Lane number 3 is on the bottom. So again, we're sticking to the main road, but instead of going down towards the point, we're going to go up these steps. Oh, that's not the right size of pen I wanted. Okay, so it's the main route. We're going to go up the main road, and you can either go down here through this little archway towards the point, or you can go around and go into enemy territory. So this is going to be your atypical flank route. I say flank route with quotation marks. It can be very risky to move around because you're playing off this environmental hazard side here. So just be careful about that one. So around a point fight, the areas you should be looking to hold would be this raised platform on this side, the point house itself, of course, because that's where the point is, and finally, over by the opposite side on this narrow walkway down here, which I'm trying to sketch, it's like a U-shaped going out towards the environmental hazard. These are the 3 areas to hold for this map, and I'm going to show you why. So the first area is this raised platform, and this is a safe bet to try and get a foothold of. Naturally, you have the advantage of high ground, so if you push through here from lane 2 and go up here, you can set up on the top of this balcony, and you can shoot down onto the point. You can get a bit of damage onto anyone who's standing over here from the enemy. You can also push round, and this makes it really useful for flank routes as well. If you have you have a flanker in your composition, or you want to play hyper aggressive on this map, it just opens up a lot more options to you. But more importantly, in relation to the point fight room, because you have line of sight down here, it means that the enemy is not going to be able to use this scorpion statue as cover, because you have line of sight onto it. And that's why holding this side is going to be important. So moving on to the other side of the point room, I find that this narrow walkway down here, I'm going to draw it out, is one of the more common strategies to use for Ascension Peak is the 5-person death ball. And what this means is you're going to group up as 5 and literally just push straight round as a group. And this means that anyone who splits up from the group is going to find himself in a pretty nasty 1v5 down there. If you suspect that the enemy team is trying to pull something like this, and chances are they normally will at some point, just stay back slightly. Just try and set up over here, or even push onto the high ground anyway, because you'll have vision of it. It just means that the enemy is going to lose the element of surprise. And here's the thing: if you're set up over here and you're going to be shooting down towards the point, actually, let me just clean the palette up. So if your enemy flanks around here, that's their objective. They want to try and get a pick. If you've set up on this side, the thing is that this is quite a narrow passageway. It's a choke point in of itself, and you have 5 enemies all really grouped up into one area. Blasters, or anyone with high damage potential, are pretty much going to lock them here. And so the only option really for your enemy would be to actually piece the scene and retreat back towards their own territory. So just something to bear in mind when you're playing on this side. The purposes of holding this entire raised area here are very similar to the high ground. So your enemy cannot take cover behind the rabbit statue. Again, because you have line of sight shooting down onto it from here and here, for instance. And also, this is a flank route that you can use at a later point in the map if you feel it's appropriate to try and get a bit of pressure onto the back line. It really does feel like a giant puzzle here, but we're finally going to get onto the main point fight here. The point fight room, rather. So, again, if you control this area, then you pretty much have control over the scorpion statue. Control this area, you have control over the bunny rabbit statue. And this is going to be the key to the success here with the statues, because, again, remember, the point is the rectangle, and it actually goes behind the statues. So you can use these statues as a means of cover to get yourself out of the enemy fire. You can also go down here towards your supporter or whoever is going to try and back you up. So that's kind of the main tactics to do with the point fight room. Controlling the other areas, you deny a big area of cover. So the enemy team that want to contest the point have to go straight onto it, and it's like where you either die on the point or you run off it. And because you've got control over these areas, you limit the options that they can do. So let's look at some... Okay. So let's look at some positioning tips for this map, and it's a large map with a lot of areas that you want to control, so it really depends on which side of the map you're playing towards, but I'll try and split it up. So your damage dealers are generally speaking going to be up here on the high ground or down back here if you're controlling these areas. Other really awesome places to set up shop would actually be over here on the house, because you have a clear line of sight straight onto the points, and also it's going to be very difficult for someone to flank you because, well, you have vision over this area. You will be able to see someone coming up to you, and also the audio effects will give it away. So damage dealers, a lot of options for you guys. Set up here, onto the high ground, on the balcony here, or even onto these steps as well. Use the trees for cover, use the house for cover, even go up the stairs if you want to. A lot of options are available, and it does depend on which side of the map your team are favouring, but your best bets will be the house, the stairs, and these 2 points. As your front lines, well, you guys are going to be on that point, aren't you? So use the statues for cover, especially if you have control of the relative area, which is going to make this a lot easier. So don't be afraid as a front line to actually push round with your damage dealer in order to help capture a certain area or push the enemy team away. And of course, the same applies onto this side as well. But front lines, you're going to be down here. If you do need to get out of enemy fire and you don't have access to these statues, then just drop down these stairs or the ramp itself. You have cover on the pillars as well, and your team will be there to back you up. That's going to be your general frontline positioning on this point fight. Supports. Keep yourself alive, keep out of danger. And I'm going to highlight this in the in-game version, the importance of this corner, which it doesn't mean much, but just from a fear perspective, you have line of sight up here, you can loop around and get heals onto the point, and you are able to help anyone who's down here as well. And of course, if you have damage dealers that are being poked out over here and here, you can, heal them. However, so supports that can just stay still, your Cereses, your Maldamba, they're going to really love this corner. Of course, you can't really see it very well from this top-down view, but it will go into much more detail in the in-game portion of the map. Now, flanks, you guys don't really give you a lot of love, I'm afraid. It's quite difficult to give you general positioning tips for the certain areas, but as flanks, you should be looking to pick up your high priority targets onto the enemy support, onto the enemy damage dealer, or winning that crucial 1v1 to turn a fight into a 5 versus 4 in your team's favour. There are some good flank routes that you can use, so you're going to be sticking around the back houses. So again, if you can push through here or go up the stairs, they're going to be flank routes they're going to use more towards the payload push side of things. But just having control of this corner means that you can actually push down onto the back and see where their support is or where their backline is. Other flank routes that you have is you can actually jump over this wall. It's quite high, and to the untrained eye, you're probably thinking, he's crazy. But again, just watch the in-game version. This is a route you can jump over. And another flank route here is on the houses, and this will become more apparent with the payload pushes, but you can push over like that. You can jump over the gaps. And that's pretty much going to be it. Your flank routes, there are a lot of ways that you can pretty much appear out of nowhere. In a way, you could even do that as well to get the jump on someone up here. So yeah, just look for those opportunities. You are flank players, you're looking for ways you can help your team by taking out high value targets, and utilize these flank routes can be really helpful. Again, I love this jump over the top. No one expects it, no one sees it coming, but you're going to see that as we go in game and show you all of this in a practical session. Okay, so here we are in Ascension Peak in the field, and I'm playing Androxus, and if you know me, that's something which I never ever do. So let's look at the lanes. Lane number 1, you can either follow the road or go through this archway, drop down the steps, and go straight into the point house. So lane number 2, you take a left turn here, sticking to the environmental hazard side. You can watch the whales go by. You can either drop down these stairs and go straight to the point, or go through these rooms back here. A little bit of a longer trek, but you're going to come out on this side and straight up here onto the raised balcony here, and you can drop down towards the point or stay up here and contest. And finally, lane number 3 is you're going to be following the path of the main road, Instead of going down towards the point, we're going to take a little diversion here to the side by this fountain. You can either go through the point this way, or you can go all the way around this walkway, going to the enemy side of the map, and that will be lane number 3. Okay, so we're going to talk here about the raised platform, and as you can see in game already the advantage of high ground, and I'm going to bang on about high ground pretty much in most of these videos, but if you watch the Stone Keep video you will know just how important it is by using the ledge as cover. But by controlling this area of the map you can shoot into the point, and pretty much anyone that's going to be down here by the well, or even taking cover behind the statues there, you're able to get a line of sight onto them. You can also flank a little bit further around and start targeting people as they're far back, so mainly that's if your supports or long range damage dealers that are going to be chilling back there. You also have flank routes available to you as well. You can go through the houses down here into their backline. You can also go up these stairs as well, but sometimes just a simple loop down from the high ground and going up to here would be enough to deter people away. So that's the importance of the raised platform to the right hand side. Secondly, when you're taking position on this hand side, of course you have the doorway going here, so anyone taking cover on this side, you have a line of sight going onto there. But this is, as we said in the theory, a very common tactic that people use is to group up as 5 and push around this narrow walkway here. And as you can see, just walking by it in game, it's incredibly narrow. So if you do mosey on over here, minding your own business, not really paying attention, all of a sudden, you know, you're hit by 5 people over here and you're dead instantly. So just hold back a little bit if you're a little bit wary about these flanks. But yeah, the importance of this area, of course, is providing that way into the enemy backline. That has a lot of cover obscuring it as well. So you're only really going to know about someone using this route when they're here, when they actually break out of cover by the fountain. Okay, the point fight room itself, and we have 2 massive statues so we can gain cover. Of course, we spoke about this in the theory, but if you have control of this side of the map, then your front lines can't, the enemy front lines rather, cannot really use these statues for cover because you have line of sight. And likewise on the other side of the map, you can't really take cover behind here if you are controlling this area of the map. So you can really reduce the amount of options, and you'll notice here as well just how big this point capture is. Pretty much just standing on this diagonal here means you're contesting the point. Not nowhere near it, so you can literally just keep walking on and off, and you're still going to be contesting the point for the purposes of overtime. So if you need to jump in and make a heroic touch, you can go through here and just go do that. Boom, you've contested the point. Super simple. Remember to use the pillars and the cover as well. These stairs give a nice amount of cover as well to anyone hiding back here. But these are the 3 key areas to hold for the point fight. Okay, so let's look at positioning for this map. So front lines, again, I want to emphasize this as well. Try and stay within the point house. Generally speaking, you'll be using these statues for cover and also leaving around using these pillars for cover as well. Just try and stay on this point. Try and contest it as much as you can and back away if you need to. Naturally, if you're playing a much more aggressive front line, then of course look to push around with your team and try and help them take control of the bigger areas. But the main ones here is going to be you are the guys contesting the points, so this is where you need to really be jumping around. You can also use these stairs for cover as well if you need to back away and get healing from your support. But yeah, just remember about how easy it is. As a front line, you can stand here, get cover behind the statue, and also be contesting the point. Super easy. Of course, just be careful of anyone who is able to get a line of sight onto you. Thank you, FaladeYT. Okay, that's it for front lines. So for damage dealers, it really does depend a lot on what sort of damage dealer you are. So your really long range carries, so your Knessers, Strixes, and Cassies, you can actually use this house over here for getting cover. You can shoot onto the points as such. You can aim down to anyone trying to flank around here, and you're relatively safe. The only way that you're going to be challenged is if someone comes over here to try and flank you, but of course you should be paying attention to your audio, and also you can see them. There's not really any hidden ways they can get around to this point, so you're relatively safe standing up here. Your more mid-range damages would be pretty much down here towards the point, or better still, over here on the high ground. My Never Step was just on cooldown there. That's a little awkward, so I've got to hop over. As a damage dealer, I really like being up here, especially your blasters, your bomb kings, and your Drogos plays. If you're not up in the air, you can just zone really aggressively, as FaladeYT here is demonstrating. You can get line of sight onto anyone on the point, anyone taking cover behind these statues, and also gives you an option to loop around and start shooting down here as well. So let's talk about support players here. And as I say to newer players that are just learning the support role, just stay alive. Just focus on healing and helping your allies. Remember that if you die, you are kind of the crux to your team in a lot of ways. So when the support goes down in a 5v5 fight, that can matter. That can mean the difference between winning a point and losing it. If your front lines don't have sustain, then they can't contest a point. If your damages are constantly low health and they're having to take cover, they're not pumping out damage. So just stay out of trouble, focus on keeping yourself alive and also healing your allies as much as you can. If you die, it's going to be incredibly difficult. So staying out as well, in Ascension Peak, this got pointed out to me. This is a really nice place for supports to position on this pillar. And I'll speak about it in the theory section. But right now, if you hug this wall, you can heal anyone on the point down here. Any damage dealers that are over here, your mid-range damage dealers, you can heal them from here, especially if you're playing Maldamba or Ceres or anything like that. You have line of sight over here. Anyone on the high ground up here, really easy healing as well. And this is kind of a really awesome place because you're also protected as well. You're out of line of sight from a lot of people that are going to try and murder you. So you can just move around these walls, keeping yourself out of cover. And you have got ways out. Of course, you can fall back, going back up the stairs, or going into that room at the back if things get a little bit too dicey. Focus on your front lines, focus on the carries, and this will be really easy for playing support. So here's some of the flank routes that I wanted to highlight here. So if you're playing as a anyone with flight, Androxus, your EV, even Drogos over here can make this jump as well. So position yourself between these two walls and then go straight up. 1, 2, 3, and hover over. Already, you've cleared that wall completely, and you're on into the enemy backline. That is a really nasty flank route to do, and not a lot of people know about it. I certainly didn't know about it until we were creating this video. So that's one of the major flank routes. Another one is here as well at the back. So if you want to get onto someone in this house, you can just go on this side, and you can simply hop over to this side to get the jump on someone if they're hovering around. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it. For they're like the most common flank routes. And of course, when you're pushing the payload as well, you're going to be sticking to these sides, trying to get round, trying to get up onto the enemy high ground if you can, and stuff like that as well. So yeah, a couple flank routes for you to bear in mind when you're doing the payload push and defense, and also just having fun on the map itself. So that's going to be it for everything to do with point fight and positioning. We're going to go into the theory behind the payload push. So you capture the point and the push is on. We're going to be looking at 2 choke points and the last line of defense for Ascension Peak. What do I mean by a choke point? Well, a choke point is an area of the map where the point cart has to move for either a very narrow section of the map, like a tight corridor, or it has to go through a 90-degree turn. And what this means is that the defending team has an advantage over an attacking team. Normally they have more ways to set up, they have better vision on the payload cart, or the attacking team are quite limited in how they can go about pushing the payload. It's normally going to be 1 or 2 of the above, or just all of the above as well. And Ascension Peak does feature a lot of it. So this is a first payload choke point. So the payload is going to be pushing this way, and the first choke point is going to be down here where it's about to go up this road. And you can argue, I'm going to argue here that actually this entire area here is the first choke point. So defenders, this is your house. Many houses like it, but this one is yours. Without it, your defense is going to be useless. You need to hold this house here as long as you can. So look to set up on the stairs, inside the house, on these stairs as well, because you're able to shoot down onto the point. You can also halt any pushes from the attackers on this side, and also shoot down to anyone in the backline down here as well. Look to utilize the archway as well. as it gives you another line of sight down into the back line, and also allows you a vision on this area of the map here, which is where the attacking team is going to be look to push forward. So, attackers. You could brute force your way through this corridor, but as we've described, against a coordinated defensive team that have set up in this house, this is going to be incredibly difficult. So, if you want to break the line, you have to flank around. So, your main pressure points are going to be these stairs, or getting someone around the back here, or even going over the top there if you have, vertical mobility. But these stairs is going to be crucial for you to break through. If you can get through this line, it means you obviously are able to flank around and take out this position, because as soon as you can get the payload up from this point, you gain control of the house and this area. So the defenders have to be pushed back, otherwise they get caught in a bit of a pincer. So defenders, house, the archways, but also try and keep an eye on this side. This is going to be a lot of fighting will be focused around this point and down here as well. So the attackers, you've got the payload up this little path, and now we're going to the second payload. And again, you can make an argument, but the choke point I'm going to talk about is just here, right before this archway. And the archway itself, again, you can argue it's an individual choke point, but we're going to talk about both these, and the way you actually get through this is kind of the same for both points, so we'll just talk about them at the same time. The defenders, where are you guys going to be held? Well, you've pretty much lost control of this house already, because the payload is going to be up here, so it'll be very risky for you to actually still be around here, so you should look to push back as quick as you can and get into a more defensive position. So frontliners, you're going to be loving the archway right here. It does provide you a bit of cover. There is also some stairs. I think it's on, yeah, it'll be on this side of the drawing course top-down view. It doesn't really show it very well, but there is a small little alley with some stairs that you will be using for cover as well. You need to make sure you're actually starting to use your high ground at the back, so you have line of sight straight onto the point, and also keeping some defenders around here or down here, so you can make sure that no one is going to push up, or you delay them as long as possible. So yeah, use that archway as your cover. Now attackers, again, you have the option of brute forcing, but the key here is going to be keeping your momentum going. If you've got the car up to this point, it normally means that you've got a numbers advantage over the enemy team, so you can't hold off on your aggressiveness. You need to keep on pushing. Push up this left side here and try and flank round if you can break through this defense here. Try and get through the stairs. Also push around here from the house as well. It's going to be a lot of firefighting. There'll be a lot of trading from quite long range, but you need to push through here. And again, if you have that numbers advantage, the defenders can't be everywhere at once, so there will be a weakness. Either there won't be someone over here or someone over here, or they'll have to focus their attention on the point to stop it moving. So that's your opportunity to go through and actually get into that backline and cause some chaos. If you do that, you'll get the payload through this second choke point. Well, defenders, it's now come to that time, the last line of defense, when the car is about to be converted and your backs are against the wall pretty much. So you're going to be on this high ground as much as you can. And I recommend these three positions. There's actually three barricades as well, which you can hide behind. But of course, that gives you line of sight onto the point, this flank route here, and also on the back here. I do like keeping someone up here as well, but of course, if the defenders have already forced rounds this way, then try and push back, because the attacking front lines are going to be very limited. So whoever's contesting the points for the defenders, you're going to be using the trees and the rocks for cover to try and contest the points. But pretty much this is it for your defenders. You have the option of going into spawn, but again, remember, whilst you may be healing and have access to items, you're not pumping out any damage. You're not going to be stopping it. You're not going to be healing. You're not going to be doing anything. So just bear that in mind. Attackers, well, you know what? How many times will I say this? Again, your critical routes will be these flank routes. They will always be there. And of course, this is meant to be difficult for you guys, because of course the defenders are going to be concentrated in this small area. So flanks and damages, try and get around your front lines as well, contesting the point. Use the archer cover and also the alleyway and the stairs as well. You can very easily turn the tide on what the defenders are using cover for. Just keep that momentum going and you shouldn't have any issues here. Remember the environmental hazard here as well. So this applies to either team. If you are able to knock off a key member of the push, either someone goes a little bit too crazy on this side and gets knocked away, then that's already a 4v5. And if it can be the difference between a push successful or a push fail. But that's the theory of it anyway. So we need to have a look and see how this plays out in game. Okay, so the payload cart has been captured and is starting to be pushed into our base. So as a defender, when we're at this very first choke point, as it's about to walk up this little corridor here, and as you can see just from the in-game screen, this is incredibly narrow. So for anyone contesting the point, they are stuck in between these two walls, and this is what makes it a choke point. So defenders, just this house, right? This big house to the side of the main road. This is where you want to be. This is what you need to hold as long as possible. Because when you're up here, you have a means of cover from the stairs, and you can get line of sight onto anywhere over here. Anyone trying to push around the right-hand side, you can get damage on here. You can move through the house as well to get cover. You can shoot down onto there, as Flade's demonstrating here. A lot of options available to you as long as you hold this house. You're also going to be positioned over here as well by the archway. So your damage dealers are probably going to fall back to here as well as being up there. It really depends on what sort of damage dealer you are playing. But these are the two areas that you want to hold the most. So attackers, how do you break through this deadlock? Well, you could brute force your way through. That is an option, certainly. But I would recommend trying to break the line. So this flank route becomes really helpful when you're playing Androxus. Look at this. As I glitch onto the wall slightly, but all the way, boom. We're shooting onto the back line, we're shooting onto the houses. So this side is going to be your friend. Push. When you have control of the point, you have control of the point house generally. So you should look to push through the back houses and up these stairs. Defenders, just keep an eye on this as well. So you may want to dedicate one of your damage dealers and your flanks to just watch this area for those routes coming over. But of course, play it as it feels, and you need to react accordingly. But that's how the attackers are going to break through if they don't go for a brute force way. So the second choke point on this map. So the payload has finally made its way up the map, and the attackers, you have control of this house. It's prime real estate right there waiting for you to capture it. So you have control of the house, you pushed up, and you've got defenders away. So defenders, you're going to be back here pretty much. You're going to be using this archway for cover. This is going to be a really important area of the map for you to hold in the upcoming fights around this map. Just be careful, of course, of flank routes. There's a lot of sneaky ways for people to get around, especially this back way. If they're coming from the house, they just drop through those arches and come down here, and they can flank around. Also, this left side as well. So you have a lot of areas for you to keep track of and make sure you know where the enemy is going to be pushing. But this archway, front lines, you're going to be loving this archway right now. Keep your damage dealers, keep them positioned around here as well so they can shoot down onto anyone contesting the point, and also fight off this passageway. This is a really key area that the attackers are going to look to exploit. If the push on that side fails, they're going to turn their attention over here. So you need to be ready for that as well. Also, start making use of your high ground at the back here as well. If it gets pushed around a little bit further and goes towards that archway, this is going to be a really key area for you to hold. So again, attackers, keep that momentum going. Go from the house, push out on those flank routes, and try and find your way here. Also, these stairs, keep a front line in here. Try and push through there as well, and you will get this payload past this point. Alright, defenders, so here we are, the last line of defense. That cart is incredibly close to being captured right now. So, once again, defenders, pretty much like you were on Stone Keep, you're back here with your backs against the wall and your spawn as well. So you can always use the spawn to keep yourself, get yourself some obvious cover and heal as well. But of course, remember, you cannot shoot out of the spawn, so please bear that in mind. High ground, hold it as much as you can. You want to stop anyone trying to get up here. So you want to have someone positioned here, over here by this barrier here, barricade as well, and this one up here. So just ways of getting line of sight down onto the points. Be careful of those flanking around from the house, as they just did there. Those coming down from this house. There's actually 2 houses. I just confused myself. But coming from that house over there, the prime real estate house down here. Make sure you watch out for that flank. And this small little hut over there as well with the stairs and that balcony leading back. Your front lines, of course, you're going to be down here. Your cover is going to come from these trees and the rocks, and also the much larger tree down here as well. I also like keeping someone over here as long as you can. It just means that obviously you get to watch this side and also contest the point as well when you're down here. So with the defenders set up, attackers, what are you going to do? Well, as you did before, you have control of this arch down, so you have the cover around here and with the stairs as well. So look to push around the sides of the houses as much as you can on that left and right. Get as much damage as you can onto that high ground. If you can get up there, the defenders should not be able to defend properly. You push them back into their spawn and they can't shoot out of it. They can't do anything to stop you. Keep the momentum going and also play around this environmental hazard as well, especially if you're playing front lines with knockback or damage dealers with a form of knockback or anything that can displace someone. Play around the drop here on the environmental hazard. Just take out someone and make it 4v5 to make it easier for you. As I said, this is a very, you've already done the hard part of this push, getting it past this archway. Now this should be a cakewalk if you get it this far, but just remember that's how you need to push back those defenders and you get a very easy conversion. So let's talk about some tips and tricks for mastering Ascension Peak in a more general sense. So as you can tell from when we've been looking through the map and also through probably your own experiences in game, Ascension Peak really does promote an aggressive style of play. And so it's not very often I get to recommend this, but actually embrace that aggressive style of play. Look to group up as 4 or 5 early on. It is a really good way of getting an early advantage over teams that are not ready for it. And there are also a lot of areas in this map that are quite easy for players to sit down, bunker up, and keep a very defensive position. So how do you get people out of a defensive position? You have to match it with aggressiveness, and you have to take them out of those positions. This is going to be extremely prevalent in the point fights and also around the houses on the payload pushes themselves. More general advice, try and remain in small groups. There's a lot of corridors, lots of off rooms that are really you don't really get much attention to, and it can be quite easy to lose track of where you are in the map and also your game awareness. There's just so many obstacles in the way. Just be aware that a fight that starts off as a 1v1 could very easily become a 4v2 literally at the click of my fingers. So always keep your wits about you and make sure you try and stay in small groups, either grouping up your damage dealers with your frontline support with front lines. You know, have a buddy, you know, to go around, because there are a number of ways that we've explored of getting into that enemy backline. But the point fight itself, remember that the point is a huge rectangle, not just the small circle. So it is really easy for you to touch one of the corners and buy overtime if you just need to wait a couple more seconds for your front lines to get into position to contest the point again. You really have to play around this, and often you'll see when you win the point fight and all of a sudden a flank gets through, walks onto the point, and then walks off immediately, goes back into cover, because by the time that overtime bar goes back down again, his front lines are back in position. It's this very back and forth style, so just go with it. Momentum is going to be key for this one as well. So if you do find yourself with a numbers advantage, make sure that you try and hold that advantage as much as possible. As said, there are a lot of defensive choke points there in the houses, on the stairs, on the steps, and from long range that could be really difficult for you to break through. So if you have your numbers advantage, or if you see that the support is on one side of the map and their frontline or DPS is isolated from them, then you pounce on them immediately. You can't allow the defensive team to set up. And that's going to cover it for some general advice on how to play this map. So we're going to keep with the theme of an aggressive style of play and look into some recommended champions to play on this map. And again, remember, I feel that the kits and the playstyle with these champions have really suit Ascension Peak. So starting with front lines, we're going to look at Khan, one of the highest DPS tanks currently in play, and that is because mainly of his Storm of Bullets talent as well. But what I want to highlight in particular about Khan is that how aggressive you can be with him. He has a lot of ways of pushing very heavily forward, and then he can throw up his personal shield or even battle shout to get himself out of the line of fire and out of damage. Of course, remember the battle shout does give you damage immunity for a couple of seconds. The commanders grab as well a piece of CC, so if you do get the jump on someone, it's really nice to actually, well, crash tackle them and throw them back into your team for a quick pick. And that's not forgetting the overpower ultimate as well. Think of it as a Makoa hook, but to the most ridiculous extreme. As long as you're good with aiming, you can pretty much pick up someone that you don't like the look of on the enemy team and launch them off the map. Again, remember, those environmental hazards are really prevalent, especially around the spawn rooms and also on the point fights when you go into that narrow passageway. So this is a really good opportunity to get that early advantage straight away. Moving on to damage dealers, and we're going to go for the more defensive route for this, but you can also play her very aggressively. This is Vivian, the DPS that's, again, you can pretty much set up anywhere with her and pump out a huge amount of DPS. She is the queen of the houses and the steps when you just set up. And if you do get pressured, you have your personal shield. You also have your sensor mines as well, so you can have a little bit of extra warning to see if you're going to get flanked. And of course, the strength of Vivian being that when she stands still and constantly firing out those bullets, the DPS just ramps up and up and up, especially if you take the talent that increases damage as you are holding down the fire for over 2 seconds, I believe. But yes, also there is aggressive Vivian as well. It's not uncommon for me to see the rogue flank Vivian get behind you. A lot of damage in close range as well, where there's not going to be much fall off, and that damage really does rack up as well. So always keep an eye out for your rogue flank Vivians. But in general term, just she's really good on the defense, and also just keeping laying down covering fire onto those defense positions, especially if you can just sit back and fire instant house and force anyone who's in there to have to take cover and just buy you a little bit more time. So for supports, we need an aggressive support, and I think Maldamba is particularly suited for this map because of his utility. He has, well, first of all, his heals, both of them, in fact, the Gourd and also the Spirits as well, mean that for champions that are going to stand still, it makes it really easier for you to hit your heals consistently. And especially if you're staying out of danger as well, you can just spend your time just placing every single heal and hitting it where it matters. Of course, the Gourd as well, when you need just a little bit more healing in a wider area, or if you need to heal yourself, if that is the case. Remember as well that Maldamba does have the more utility options as well. We're looking at the stuns from his reloader. So, you know, if you do pick up Deft Hands as well, stun Damba can be quite terrifying as well to deal with if you're going to flank him. But there is also the Dread Serpent as well. And it is one of the best ways of clearing out a defensive position is to throw the Dread Serpent and aim it so it explodes behind the position. So when the snake explodes, the fear actually pushes people out of the defensive position. If you can practice your aim with the Dread Serpent, you can really set up your team for some brilliant picks as well. Maldamba, of course, is just a solid support right now, and it's just one of the reasons that this style of play does suit a lot of other maps as well, and why he is considered one of the best supports in the game and a staple in the competitive sphere. Finally, flanks, and I'm going to have to play the Androxus card for 2 times in a row, but as you can see from the in-game recordings, playing Androxus with the never stepping over the flank routes, which is only available to those that have the vertical mobility. And again, Androxus enables you to play hyper-aggressive, to get in the face of people, especially when you flank them. If you go through the side rooms, if you go up the stairs, if you go over the top of the rooms, as you saw in the previous section as well. Multiple ways of getting into the backline, multiple ways of getting behind the enemy as well in those defensive positions. Androxus at point-blank range with that revolver can do a lot of damage and a lot of space for your team as well. And of course, you do also have that ultimate as well, which again, on a map like Ascension Peak, similar to Stonekeeper as well, where you have a lot of avenues for you to appear seemingly out of nowhere and hit some really high value ultimates. So again, Androxus excels on this map, but you can also make a really good argument for that of Eevee as well for the same reasons. But we're going to stick with Androxus for this one. And that is going to cover it for today's lecture on Ascension Peak. And I hope that you have enjoyed the video. Please leave a like if you learned something new. Let me know down in the comment section, what are your top plays on Ascension Peak? What are the greatest comebacks? Have you hit an insane quadra kill, knocked a lot of people off the map, or just a really awesome story to tell? I want to hear it. Let me know in the comment section. Or do you have any additional tips? What did I miss? Again, let's build up this community of educating the newer players that want to know how to master Ascension Peak. You'll see me next time. I can announce that the next beginner's guide is going to be on Bright Marsh. I have already started work on the script and I've already made the thumbnail as well. So follow me on my socials. I have been updating the thumbnails as well. So the beginner's guide to Frog Isle now features a cartoon picture of a frog. We have a castle for Stone Keep, and for this one I decided to just flex my well, my tracing capabilities and gets a really awesome drawing of Ascension Peak. And I hope that it just makes my thumbnails a little bit more better than just a simple screenshot. So that's going to be everything for today. Again, hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Class dismissed.